TvGrace presents the inexpressible words of God, the gospel of grace, on the lips of Jesus Christ man. Abba, Father.
Tonight we have a review as an army who has done lots of exercise and training, and they have 2 or 3 years, very firm years, as a battalion with powerful weapons, its rifles, its bayonets. But once in a while you have to dust it out, grease it up, shine it. That's today's topic. Preparing well what we already have, looking to see if we're using it appropriately. Amen? So for that, let's go to the letter of Corinthians, to the letter to the Corinthians chapter 10. Those that take notes, I recommend they do so. They're going to be 5 steps that we're going to discuss. Five steps based on these verses that we have talked about in the past. Verse 3, 4, and 5. Let's read from chapter 10, verse 3, 4, and 5. It says, "For though we walk in the flesh," it's as if Paul was to say, what a pity, right? As if Paul was to say, what a pity we walk in the flesh, because he says, though we walk in the flesh, as if to say, this isn't the best thing that can happen to one. Unfortunately, we are walking in the flesh. It's like to accept a reality. Though we walk in the flesh, he says, we do not war according to the flesh. This is the science of this. Okay, we are human beings who walk in the flesh, but we do not expect anything from her. We don't militate according to her. There is an infidelity here of Paul towards the flesh. He says, I walk in the flesh, but I don't trust it. Neither militate according to or expect anything from her. That's what he's trying to say. Do you understand it that way? Though we walk in the flesh, we don't militate, as if to say the word militate is as a soldier that militates in a battle. So then, he that walks in the flesh has a battle because he walks in the flesh. And he has a daily battle with infirmities, with prosperity, with responsibilities, with several things for walking in the flesh. But Paul, it's as if he found something here, a provision, help. Look, we walk in the flesh, but don't worry. You don't have to militate according to. So then the question comes, Paul, then what do you recommend? So here's the recommendation. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. Notice, they don't come from the flesh. You can't expect anything from her. In the Old Testament, they would come from the flesh. The only thing, no one could fulfill the law. Everyone was unfaithful. But in the Old Testament, they were carnal. Weapons were carnal. You fast, you prayed a lot. Remember Moses prayed and his arms would come down, and when they would get tired for long prayers, the nation would lose the battle. And then Joshua would lift up his arms, and then they would start to win the battle again, because in the Old Testament, it was according to how you worked. Your victory depend on that. The problem is that the flesh is very faithful to its condition, and eventually it would make you lose the battle. Because to walk in the flesh is not easy. Therefore, God established a better covenant upon better promises, teaching you that this isn't about the way you pray or the way you kneel down or the abstinences of foods, observations, ceremonies, anointment with oil, hard body treatment. Our weaponry, they're not carnal. Doesn't come out of something you do. As we see, the Protestant religious system, their weaponry depends on what they do. You hear them. If you don't pray, the devil is going to take you. If you don't read the Bible every day, be careful and maintain. Be careful. Don't look here nor there, because they depend on the flesh. But Paul says, listen, do whatever you do, you're going to lose. Because the weapons of our warfare are powerful. Say, our weaponry are powerful. But those weapons, as all weapons, you need to know how to use it, right? A weapon you don't know how to use is dangerous. For an example, the dynamite is a very dangerous weapon. You give it to an engineer and he sees a mountain. Instead of making an uphill road, he puts dynamite, brings it down, and makes a flat road. And the automobiles last longer, less dangerous. But you have to learn how to use your weapons. And the New Testament recommends several weapons that I want to recommend tonight. I've used them. I've learned to use them. It hasn't been easy for me. It could be easy for you since I've already had the challenges, right? I've learned to use them, and now you can learn how to use them. They're easy. As Jesus says, my yoke is easy and light. The only thing is easy if you understand them. Listen, a computer is easy to operate when you know how to operate it. When you don't, you are in serious problems. Listen, I have a cellular phone that's phenomenal. You send texts and do many things, enter the computer, but I don't have time to study it. All I know how to do is call, shut it off, and receive calls. I have a tremendous weapon, but I can't not use the benefits of it because I lack the knowledge. So in the like manner, these spiritual weapons are very powerful when you know how to use them correctly. The angels, they work wonders. Though God gives them to you, if you don't know how to use them, even here in this ministry, there are people that the weapons are good for nothing. But for others, it's very beneficial. My lips are very dry because I drank a pill, so you're going to see me drinking lots of water. And it isn't because I'm sick, it's a pill to lose weight, to take care of the pounds because I've been a little careless. Those are carnal weapons. Well, so then Paul says here, verse 4, let's continue to the gospel. For the weapons of our warfare, say, they are not carnal, but powerful, almighty in God to destroy strongholds. It isn't for you to pass the hand to smooth the problem. It's to destroy the problem. They're powerful. How many believe so? It says, verse 5, casting down arguments and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ. Where are you going to cast down the arguments and every high thing? In your mind, because it says bringing to captivity all thoughts. It is to say that you are a human being that's very perfect and you have a flesh that's very faithful to its deterioration, its fidelity. You have a nature that's ruined. So therefore you need weapons that are very powerful that help you bring into captivity when those thoughts come to destroy you and hurt you. Blessed. This is very important, what we're speaking about. From there depends if you're walking through the path of life. The path of life. I will show you the path of life so you can enjoy your youth, your old age, that you may enjoy it. But for that, you have to have a knowledge and a lifestyle, a life of thoughts that you can overcome. Because not everyone lives well. You can have a lot of money and be suffering, but you can have very little money with knowledge and you enjoy it more than he that has money. Because this is not a thing of the flesh. The flesh is whom possesses money. So then, this is a lifestyle. If it's true that I am the other, if it's true that I am the edifier, if it's true that God has chosen me to take the authentic gospel to all those nations, it's best you practice with me. That isn't anything good, because sometimes I go through the worst so you don't have to go through the challenges. One day Paul says, I'm going to comfort you with the consolation that I've been comforted with. I've had to, crush glass so you don't have to. Sometimes that happens, but I've experimented these things, and the only thing the Lord has told me, what are you going to do? You're going to stay hit? Defend yourself. I have weaponry that are powerful. I don't lie. This is the gospel. Say powerful weapons. Do we have them? Yes or no? Are we complete? Yes or no? It isn't time for you to start to cry and that, oh, have pity on me. No one visits me. No one calls me that I am the black sheep, that my mother don't like me, that my father. It isn't time. Because these weapons are exactly for that, to deliver you from those carnal things. Hello. So then I thought, listen, right now I've just got back from a hospital where I was visiting someone that's been affected. So then here in the second letter to the Corinthians, the first step we're going to discuss, say the first, write it there, take notes. Number one, let's look to the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 11. I hear people out there speaking the power of God, the power of God. There's one that his throat almost... But I tell you, if you don't have this knowledge, the power of God, what good is it? Because the power of God is in the gospel. Paul said the gospel is the power of God. Not what you fast or sacrifice. It's the gospel that's the power of God, not you, because our weapons are powerful in God, not in your flesh. And if it's not in your flesh, then they're powerful in God, and there has to be a knowledge so that you can manifest this power. The power of God is always pleasant. The power of God always deals with lives that are peaceful, people that are loving, people that walk in rest. That is the power of God. Not a person that's always looking out for the devil. Things are rough. I see leaders that don't impart peace. Speaking of the power of God. And the best thing is the power of God, and the power of God is the gospel. And that's what I am reading. And that's where this derives from. What happens? The first step is how to use your weapons in sicknesses. Hello. This flesh, does it get sick? Yes or no? Right? It gets sick? Don't tell me I don't receive it. No, that's fanaticism. No, don't say I don't receive it. Because then you're going to get sick and then you're going to hide. Oh, they're going to see that I'm sick. No. This flesh gets sick. This flesh receives all kind of things. But since we don't militate according to the flesh, so we have to use the weapons of our militia so we can then come against the sicknesses when they arrive. So look at verse 11. For we who lives? We. In those days, they are always delivered to death for Jesus' sake, that the life of Jesus also may be manifest where? In our mortal flesh. The life of whom? Manifest where? In our what? And we live where? In the flesh. It says we live in the flesh, but we don't militate according to. Say, according to. So now what happens if the weapons of our militia are powerful and the life of Jesus is manifest in your flesh and your flesh at that moment is sick? What's going to happen to that infirmity next to the life of Jesus? You have to be clear as to how you're going to use them. You can't be using them, maybe it's perhaps the way my other pastor said, that I have to fast 3 days. Perhaps I'm watching lots of television and that perhaps the life of Jesus is not manifesting because I've had a problem. No, you have to be clear. Those weapons, he gave them to you. You deserve them because you're complete. And you are already blessed with every spiritual blessing. They're yours no matter what, but you have to know how to use them. You have to specify when you're hurting that in that moment that you can say the life of Jesus without fasting, without repetitious prayers, and it's the life of Jesus, and I need that weapon, angels. That those weapons given to me, I need them in this moment of sickness. But you have to stay firm in that. You have to stay firm. Don't you see that this flesh gets sick? This flesh gets sick. And you can't expect to get sick. You have to do preventative work. As a matter of fact, right now, lay your hands right here and say, I declare myself healed from head to toe. Come on, say it. Healed from head to toe. I say that the life of Jesus is manifest in my mortal body. Oh. The life of Jesus is manifest when you're tired. It's manifest in everything. Well, let's go to the second step. We've worked with sickness. Now let's work with scarcity. Number 2, economics, scarcity. Let's look there to the second letter to the Corinthians 8:9. We are still here. The second letter to the Corinthians 8:9. When you are there, say, Abba, Father. It says, for you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. We expect for you to know his grace. Paul says, you already know the grace, not the law, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. And here it's not speaking of doctrine because these 2 chapters, context, pretext, everywhere is speaking of finances. Second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 8 and 9 is speaking of money, economics. It says, for you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, that you through his poverty might become rich. And in this I give advice. It is to your advantage not only to be doing what you begun and were desiring to do a year ago. Riches have principles, and it is to give and receive. It's more blessed to give than to receive. If you sow, you're always going to receive. You're never going to lack, because that has a great foundation for the future. Teach your children how to sow, that they see you giving. That isn't a game that when they're gifted, you say, sow unto the Lord. I have kids that give me $1, 50 cents. Sometimes they give me $2. In the class, when they take the offering, they give me $11 that they've collected from the kids. They sow from when they're little. You begin to teach them that so he doesn't become cheap. So then God has a response. So when sickness arrives, or number 2, or when you're lacking. Let's go to the third point. When weaknesses come, how to use your weapons when your body humiliates you and you do things that you feel humiliated, that you feel guilty, that you lose your realization as a person and you say, wow, a person like me, look what happened to me. And that happens. There are folk that suddenly look here in channel 23. There's a young man, very elegant man, that tall gentleman. I heard his testimony. He gave it himself. He that gives news on channel 23. That sometimes he doesn't know how to captivate his flesh, and he's had to absent himself from the channel, and they've found him with the homeless, with the drunk, laying out drunk as can be 3-4 days, and the alcohol humiliates him tremendously. Those are moments. There are folk that are very useful, they're very smart, intelligent, but there are moments that Paul said, the evil day. There are evil days for certain people. First letter to the Corinthians chapter 4. Verse 1 says, let a man so consider us as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required in stewards that each one be found faithful. But with me, he says, but with me, it is a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by a human court. In fact, I do not even judge myself. My conscience is clear. Say, my conscience is clear, yet am I not hereby justified, but he that just judges me is the Lord. Listen. You know what Paul is doing here? Using his weapons that are powerful. You know how he's using them? Look, I kill Stephen. I have to use my weapons not to walk in a guilty conscience. I obligated Christians to blaspheme against Christ, but I use my weapons. I don't have a guilty conscience. I separated myself from my wife, and I left a child there in Rome, and it's true, he didn't remarry. He preferred to stay without a wife. But I'm not going to let that destroy my life. In nothing I have a guilty conscience. I did it. He must have reasons, because if that happened to the apostle, something happened. So what happens? That a person that obligated to blaspheme, that killed, a person that failed in his matrimony when he's an expert giving advice to matrimonies, he saved thousands of matrimonies, but he couldn't save his. So now is he going to live in a guilty conscience? They've already given me a blow, and I'm going to keep receiving blow? Paul says, I know that everything that's happened to me has worked for the better of the gospel. I understand that in this life, there isn't a bird that falls from the sky without God having knowledge of it. So I killed Stephen, but I didn't do it purposely. I thought I was doing the right thing. So I'm going to put that aside. And I obligated to blaspheme because I had a zeal for the law till I noticed that the end of the law is Christ. So what am I going to do? Oh, saying I am a miserable sinner. Oh, I have so much guilt. What you're going to do is end your life. I don't know what happened to you, but you must stop living in your past. Paul says, forgetting what is left behind and reaching forward to the things ahead. I'm saying if you want to use the powerful weapons in God, if you know how to use the weapons you've been given, use them. That's what they're for, so you can defend yourself, right? If the flesh whipped you, don't receive two whippings. Number 4, when the infirmities come, that was first, and then when scarcity, and third, when the weakness comes. And fourth is when criticism arrives, murmuring, and defamation comes into your life. Listen, when your sister arrived and you picked her up at the airport and you received her with joy, and when you sat down to drink coffee with her at your house, she said, "You know that Mama doesn't want to see you." Yes. She thinks that you didn't write to her in Mother's Day and this happened. They're all upset with you. And Dad, more so, because you know you failed in this and that. You know that there are family members that have lots of problems. There are other families that are so united, so precious. Oh, and how precious, right? A united family, a family that they support one another. I don't know, that they work together, right? There are families that they can't even work together. No, with my brother, I can spend Christmas with him, but no more. Or I can with him, but when they're speaking against you, that they're speaking against you, you sometimes want to sit them all in and gather them, and you would like to take them. You are a hypocrite. You spoken against me, and you this, you accuse me of that, right? Oh, that is really good when you can, right? Open yourself up that way and say everything you feel. And it'll be nice if they would believe you. But nothing. You let loose like that, and then the fire, greater power, fights and situations derive from it. Or at your job, they spoke against you and you're trying to defend yourself, and suddenly you say, "I'm going to speak with my friend here. Do you know they say that I am the one that broke that machine? You know who was the one that broke it? It was so-and-so. So if they come to you and say, well, you think he broke it? Say no." So if you perhaps would have kept silent, you would have been okay. Now, the person you told really thinks that you're trying to defend yourself. And if the boss comes by, tell him this. So when this guy comes, he knows that it is exactly what I told you and they don't think against me. So now you have two enemies. That is why the weaponry that God offers, they're best for you. You know how I would like to take a mic here in South Miami and speak? But I am going to hurt people. And that's not right. And it doesn't work. Now the weapons that the gospel offers, they work. They are in Romans. Let's look to Romans chapter 12. I recommend them in case something happens to you. I hope nothing does. But if something happens, look at what it says. Chapter 12, verse 10, and so forth. It says, "Not lagging behind in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord, rejoicing in hope, being patient in what? In tribulations, being constant in confession, prayer. Share with these saints in their needs, practicing hospitality. Bless those who persecute you," those that defame you. Bless those that persecute you, those that curse you. It says, bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those that rejoice, and weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind towards one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associating with the humble. Do not be wise in your own opinion. How beautiful. Humble people are so beautiful that everybody comes close to you. People that are obnoxious and they have them attitudes. Those characters, they that don't work in this ministry when a person is, I don't support a person that's not humble. Humility is the most precious thing that exists. It's to recognize, yes, I failed. Forgive me what I said. You misunderstood. I was at fault. Forgive me. Right? Humility. And with those type of people you should associate. When you see a person, can be with whomever that you see arrogance, don't say, oh, it's that he's a blessed brother that's arrogant. No, he soon or later is going to do it to you. Don't associate yourself with them. Keep them at a distance. Those people that think that instead of sweat, they sweat perfume. Verse 17. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men. If it's possible, if it's possible, as much as it depends on you, live peacefully with all men. Beloved, do not advance yourself, but rather give place to the wrath, because it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay. Therefore, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him to drink. By doing this, heap coals of fire on his head. Look, I had a blessed brother here that I helped him tremendously. A minister, I helped him a lot. Perhaps I had no one else with finances in every way, and he paid me terribly. But one day he presented a person to me that was the one that found this location. So if I was to curse him, God used him. There's someone that probably causes harm to you, but suddenly God uses him in a way that you don't realize that brings about blessing to you. But that's if you maintain yourself not militating according to the flesh. You can't one day, have your own vengeance and begin to talk against them. No, because you're between, you have to say, Father, they are talking about me. They're saying this. I feel like defending myself, but that is to militate according to the flesh. But I'm not going to defend myself. And what I'm going to do is leave a place for you to defend me. Angels, you know that I am not defending myself. I leave it in your hands. Do you think they work? And you don't have to speak not one word. You don't have to defend yourself. You're not going to, because the Lord himself will place in the heart of others peace with you until things are seen as one has to see them. Now, that is difficult because to stay silent, as we say, I want to get on the platform to defend myself. But no, because when you defend yourself, you will curse, humiliate, defame, then you're doing it yourself. So God says, since you've already militated according to the flesh, well, let's see how it comes out. Now, if you allow me, and you need this weaponry, because everybody that grow in grace, they find enemies. Those that grow in grace, sooner or later, someone is not going to like you, and they're going to begin to talk against you. And sometimes, even in your own family, they begin to cause harm, and you have to stay silent. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. Fifth point is similar to the fourth point. Persecution, what it does is lift you up. We use the same recipe. We don't curse, but bless and leave things in the hands of the Lord, that the Lord will sort it out sooner or later. Now, you want to demonstrate that you are spiritual? Begin to do this. Because you can say, no, I know grace, brother, but what? I've been here since the apostle begun this ministry. And what? If you don't put these steps into practice, there's nothing. You could have arrived a month ago, but since you have your mind cleansed, you say, I like that. I'm going to begin to practice. And you use this and it works better for you than he that's been here 40 years. Christ said it. There are laborers that begun at 8 in the morning, and there are other laborers that begun at 2. And they both got paid the same. So the great thing of the gospel is that there is no competition. We all qualify. Doesn't matter when you arrive, you are complete. You could have arrived tonight or this year and everything begins perfect. No, it's that I've only been here a month. No, don't feel less than. What you need to do when you arrive, begin to practice these things. Learn them. Because in the long run, you are inheriting the promises that God has given you. And you know when you practice these things, you're going to deliver yourself from. Look at Galatians chapter 5 to see what you're going to deliver yourself from. Galatians chapter 5. It says, verse 16, I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Remember that Paul said, though we walk in the flesh, we don't militate according to. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. And these are opposed to each other. There's war. They're not still. What they do is oppose. They are always opposing one another because the desires of the flesh do not submit to the law of God. It is to say the law of the Spirit. What's normal is that there's always a battle that you every day have to divide. It says, verse 18, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, loudness. This is what you are. It is to say, you are adultery. You are fornication, because that is in your flesh. The idea is not to walk according to the flesh, so these attributes don't manifest themselves. And if one of them manifests, you have to use the weapons to defend yourself, because one or the other will manifest in our lives in different times of our lives, and you need to learn how to defend yourself, not to enter into the practice of them. Because a thing is that a bird comes through and, forms a nest instead of just dropping a straw. So it says idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousy, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, envy, murders, drunkenness, rivalries, and things such as, just as I've told you before, those who practice. You don't practice, but you sometimes have done this. Those that practice are them that delight in doing it continuously, and it doesn't bother them. But this happens to the blessed of the kingdom. Now, those that practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But the Spirit of the Spirit is love, The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, meekness, temperance. Against such there's no law. When you are humble, these things are manifest: love, long-suffering, patience. You're like that because that is the fruit. You're being educated, and the fruit that it's in you is temperance, and you enjoy the path of life. Therefore, I'm done with this review. We have cleansed our weapons. We've sprayed it with 3-in-1 so that you won't have to chew a bullet when you're going to shoot, that you are aware that you may defend yourself in all aspects of life. But look, don't let nothing of the things of this life stall you. Use wisdom because the weapons are there for you.